Hi everyone, welcome to Getting Crafty with Cari. Today I am going to give you a tutorial on how to make a fabric mask. These are something that is a big deal right now with our country trying to fight the COVID-19. And these have been things that have been requested not just to protect others from your sneezing or coughing, but also hospitals are rationed a lot of masks, and these can be used to place over an existing mask, and then these can be washed and reused. So like for instance, you may have a mask that you already have but want to extend its life a bit. These are actually made with a pocket, and you can slide in any mask that you already have, and then this outer shell can be then washed. So I'm going to show you how to make these. This particular one has elastic on the ends that hook over your ears. Take off my glasses. It has like a little thing that forms over your nose and then can be spread out. So you can see this is the style that I will be making today. And I am going to show you a modification at the end as well, so that either if you have a allergy to elastic, or if you just don't have any, they can be made a different way too with ties, and they actually are a little bit easier. So to do this, I'm going to give you a list of supplies that you're going to need. You can actually make at least 2 masks from a fat quarter. A fat quarter typically measures 18 inches by 21 inches, and we are going to be cutting for one mask a rectangle that measures 15 inches by 8 inches, and that's what we're going to use. I also have cut for the ends. We are going to be making our own little bias tape ending, and I've cut strips also 8 inches by 2 inches. Can be a little bit shorter, but it just makes it easier to work with. So when cutting your fabric, those are the 2 sizes you'll need. 2 pieces of 8 by 2, 1 piece 8 by 15. So let's get at it. Oh, the other supplies you'll need is some scissors, a ruler, some type of a marking pencil or pen. You will want to have a pipe cleaner, or you can even use a twisty tie that you would maybe get off of bread if you don't have pipe cleaners, but some sort of thing that has that ability to bend. And then you will need some elastic, and I have cut strips about 9 inches long. You can make them longer if you don't want it to be as tight around your ears, but that is what you'll need. So you'll actually need 2 pieces of elastic, 2 small strips, 1 larger rectangle, scissors, pipe cleaner, ruler, pencil, some pins to make it easy, a safety pin, and I think that's all you're going to need other than your sewing machine. So let's get at it. So the first step is you're going to take your large rectangle and you are going to fold it with the pretty sides together. So you're going to put the 2 pretty sides folded together, and you're going to take your measuring tape and you're going to measure about 1.5 inches down. And the reason we're doing this is a step that's going to create our little pockets so that we can put in extra padding or extra barrier inside of this. You don't have to use the pocket, but this is nice to have. So 1.5 inches from each side, and then we're going to come over to our sewing machine, and these are all going to be straight stitch. I have set the settings with the width at 3, tension at 4, length at 2. I've found that that is a good length for sewing on this. Oh, and the fabric is just regular quilting fabric, cotton. You wouldn't want it to be super thin, but you can use a thicker material. You could even use flannel if you prefer, but I'm doing it for the sake of this tutorial with cotton. Okay, so we're going to sew up to about that 1.5, and then we're going to back it up, and then we're going to lift and move forward all the way down to that other marking, and it doesn't have to be exactly on the line, but right around that spot. You don't have to back it up on the edges because we're going to be doing a lot of sewing on the edges. So then we're going to clip that off. Cut off all of our strings. And then we're going to go over to the ironing board. And this isn't a necessary step, but it makes life a whole lot easier. So I'm going to come over here, and we're going to kind of fold this open, and we're going to iron our seam flat. Doesn't have to be perfectly, perfect, but you'll see here's our opening now for where we kind of had that gap. Then I'm also going to take these 2" by 8" and I'm going to basically make my own little bias tape. So we're going to just fold the edges and iron the edges closed. And we're going to do that for on both sides. Doesn't have to be exactly to the middle. Be careful not to burn your fingers. I do it all the time. And it doesn't have to be perfectly flat either, but the idea is that it's giving it kind of this shape. Now you can use bias tape. That is a totally appropriate thing, but I'm making my own out of the same fabric that I'm making the mask from so that it matches. But you can purchase bias tape, which is basically fabric already pre-set like this for you, and then you can just cut the length that you want. Okay, so I don't need the iron anymore for anything, so I'm going to unplug it. We're going to come back over. This is probably the trickiest part of this whole process. We're going to flip this inside out. So now you can see the opening here. And we're going to be taking and sewing a top stitch across the top of both sides here. So we're going to use the same settings. And we're going to basically just set it across, and we're going to sew across. So you have to be careful not to sew all your pieces together. So this is the trickiest part, in my opinion, of making these. So you can see I'm just kind of going along the edge. And it's basically just kind of sewing that thing that the seam that we ironed open. We're just basically kind of giving it a nice crisp thing. So we've already got one side done, and then we want to do the other one. So same thing, but we're going to go the other way. If you accidentally sew your pieces together, don't freak out. You can always pull it out, use your good old seam ripper, and start again. But you can see this is probably the trickiest part of this whole thing. Everything else is pretty easy. Tuck this, get it flat. All right. Now, once we have that done, we're going to bring it back open so you can see it's not perfectly straight, but that's okay. This is actually going to be facing towards the inside, and once it's all kind of sewn together, it's not really seen if it's perfectly straight. Okay, all these little edges. All right, so the next step is you have this sleeve. And some people get really accurate and mark out and measure and all that kind of stuff, but I just kind of do it by sight. And I just kind of hang it to where this opening is kind of across the top, and I've got maybe about 1 inch folded up to where you can see that it's flat like this, okay? And then the next step is we're going to sew an edge all the way around. Okay? So we'll get started on that. Basically just sewing all 4 edges. One more side. And you don't have to do any back stitching on these because basically all these ends are going to be sewn together. So there's not a lot of, like, you know, back stitching that you have to do to secure the seam. Okay, so now you can see we've kind of got this big envelope, and it's going to basically become our pocket. So the next step is, as these sit across your nose, it's nice. You don't have to do this. Again, this isn't a required thing, but it will form nicely around your nose if you have something here that has like an underwire of some kind. So again, you could use a twisty tie, you could use like a small piece of wire, but I'm going to be using specifically a pipe cleaner. And for this, I'm going to just cut it in half. So I have a little wire cutter here, and I'm just going to cut it in half. So 1 pipe cleaner and 1 fat quarter will get you 2 of these. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to put it up against this very top seam on the top. Okay, so you can see I've kind of pushed it all the way up against this edge right here. And then we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to secure this in its spot by sewing across the middle. So we'll do that. And again, you don't have to do any back stitching. Just sew it from end to end. All right. Edges, and now you can see how it holds its shape. Okay, all right, moving right along. We're like halfway done already. So now the next step is we're going to make these pleats. So you're going to flip it over and we're going to basically fold 3 times. So you've got your pocket here, flip the pocket to the back, and we're just going to take and we're going to fold up and then pin into place. And we're going to do that 3 times. Again, you don't have to be perfect on the exact spots or amount of distance between each fold. It just allows that extra kind of like pleated way of adding a barrier within the mask itself, but also the flexibility to form around your face. So we're basically going to do this 3 times. So you should have about 6 pins in here. Some people like to use the little clippy clamps. That would work too. But I'm just going with pins. All right. So now you can see how it's going to open up. All right. So next step, we're going to sew just across the end to get those pleats set into place. Again, no back stitching necessary. Just sew straight down. All right. One side done. Okay. So now the mask itself is pretty much done. So I like to kind of clip and even up the edges a little bit. Makes it easy to get the ends done. Okay, so you can see how it'll open up. Here's how your mask is going to look. So now, last step is we got to get the elastic on the ends. So what we do is I take, and again, having the pocket towards the back, and you don't have to do, you know, a particular side first, but this is how I like to do it. You're going to take these little pieces or a bias tape to the end, and you're going to fold it again pretty sides together, and you're going to sew one edge to the end. Sorry if I'm not doing big technical terms. I'm a visual learner and I like to teach by showing, and so I'm sure that I'm not using all of the exact technical words for everything. Same thing on the opposite side. Don't worry about what's hanging over because we're going to trim those down. That's why I was saying you can make them shorter if you wanted. Okay. All right. Now, the next step is we're going to basically be folding over to this side, and elastic is going to go inside of here. Now, there are two ways that you can do it, and I'll show you one before I sew it, and then I'm going to show you the way that I've been doing it because it's faster and a little bit easier. So you have a choice. What I do is I trim down these to about 1/4 of an inch on each side. So now you basically have these two sides. And you're going to want to fold and just kind of tuck, and you can put a pin or some sort of a clamp in place, but you can kind of see how it's going to close up, and then the other side has a clean seam. Now, some people will do this part first and then take your elastic and pin it to the end, and then slide it through and then tie it. But for me, I'm going to actually place it here and sew it while it's already in because it's faster for me than stringing it. So I basically get everything kind of prepped and in its place, and then I'll pin it and then sew it. So hopefully you can see what I did there. For the sake of time, I'll just do these now, and then hopefully you can see the steps well enough. So again, I'm just going to set the elastic in its spot because to me this is a faster way to do it for me. You'll want to be careful to keep the elastic all the way up this way though if you do it this way, because otherwise in the end, if you sew through it, you'll have your tie little knots on the outside, which isn't the end of the world, but if you want it to look nicer, then you'll want to make sure that the elastic isn't sewn through at this step, but it won't kill anything. Okay, so I have everything kind of pinned where I want it to be. We are almost done. So I'm going to take and I'm going to again sew across. I'm making sure that my elastic is out towards the side so that I'm not sewing through it. This one I did backstitch a little. I didn't do it at the top only because my sewing machine was sitting in one spot for a little while. But if it didn't, then I would have backstitched. Same thing on this side. Okay, so now sewing part on this one is all done. The last step is tying and tucking in our elastic. Get all these pieces done. Okay, so then I just basically take this, I'm gonna tie it in a knot, if my fingers let me do it. Sometimes the elastic will pop out and I have to start over, and then basically I'm gonna pull it through and tuck in that tied spot, kind of drag it in. So you can see how, like, if you had done this step, you could have strung it through with your safety pin and done it that way, but this just goes faster for me. Okay, do the same on this side. And there you go. Mask is all done. You've got your pocket, so you can add an additional mask inside if you desire. And it is all ready to go. Now, just real quickly, I've already prepared one other one so that you can see that if you don't have elastic, you can also do these ties in which you can tie around your ears. So I went ahead and made everything except for this last tie, just so that you can see a modification to this. So what I did was I basically cut a strip just like the other one and ironed in the edges, but I made my strip much longer. I think this one is like 20 inches. You can adjust it to whatever length you want, but this is basically the idea. Take it and fold it in half with your finger, and then find the center so that you kind of know approximately where the middle is. Pretty sides together. And then we're going to take a pin and just kind of pin it in its spot for this center part. And instead, you're going to just sew this one side first, just like we did the other one before we did the elastic. You don't have to pin that right there if you didn't want to. So that you have this side basically sewn onto the edge, but instead of trimming off your edges here, you're going to leave all of this on. And instead, once you flip it over, you'll see that that will be the other side. But instead of starting here, you're going to start at the end. So basically, fold the sides together like that. Okay? And you're going to start sewing from the end. Hopefully you see what I did there. Basically just made our own little ties. And when we get close to here, you want to make sure that it's folded over and attached to the mask. Keep it going. Get close to the end, you'll want to fold this in so that you have a clean inside edge. All right, and that's it. Now you have one instead made with ties instead of elastic. So that's the only change that you would do. Very simple modification. Same concept. Everything else is exactly the same. It's just this part is a longer strip and you don't have to put any elastic through. I hope that this tutorial is helpful for you. If you have any questions at all, please leave a comment. I will do my very best to answer your question and reply back to you as soon as possible. Share my video, subscribe to my YouTube. I'd love to see you more often. I do lots of tutorials on various crafts and baking and just different things that are useful for you around your house and in your craft room. I appreciate you joining me, and again, thank you so much.